Well, after the win over Ireland last week, the Springboks move on to their last November international, and this one is up against Wales. Now, the circumstances of this game are very different to the rest of November. There are many Springboks unavailable for this matchup, going back to their own original sides outside of international rugby. So for this lineup, predicting Rassie's team, it is a little bit more difficult. Now, there are a lot of different articles saying different players are unavailable for this contest, so we have tried our absolute best to put together a 23 that we think Rassie will be selecting. So it is myself and it is Vic from Vik&Wern Sports Chat. Mate, this game, it's outside of the international test window, which means that certain players are out, but overall, there's still going to be a pretty strong Springbok squad taken to the field, won't there?
I think so. Look, no one has to release their players for this one.
Yeah.
So it was always going to be difficult to get a team together for this one. I thought, I mean, look, we always talk about on how great we have a depth in the squad and everything like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, you still need key positions and stuff like that. I mean, it's going to be tough. I'll get hammered as usual. Don't worry. I don't even know to say these are the starting three. I could actually just say these are the 4 props and these are the 2 hookers and let's go for it, But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, the game on the weekend was quite an interesting game. A little bit of old school rugby, old school Springbok rugby back again. Good to see, actually. A lot of people, boring and stuff like that. I actually enjoyed it because changed the tactics to get the result. You know what I mean? I mean, we weren't very clinical. The game could have been over at half time if they were more clinical.
I think that it also came down to the fact that there has been so much talk between those two sides. The Springboks made a huge statement up against the Irish. They pretty much said, look, we could score points pretty much any time that we wanted to throughout that second 40 minutes, but all they wanted to do was keep on getting those Irishmen penalised and pretty much just, maim them in front of that home Aviva crowd. It was quite a different tactic. Yeah, it was a bit of aggression, a bit of a throwback to the old school days, but like I said, the only thing it was missing was a punch-up, and we got pretty close a couple times.
We got close, and I mean, it started off with the first try from Damian Willemse running to the Irish crowd, telling them, you could see it was a grudge match. They were up for it, and I mean, look, you've got my favorite pundit again, Matt Williams, talking about we have to bring the scrum pressure down. We've got to make the scrum less effective in World Rugby because the scrum was unbelievable on the weekend. I mean, Ireland had nothing against it, nothing.
And now heading into this match, Wales also going to be making drastic changes. So these scrums will look completely different from definitely that Welsh pack that we saw up against the All Blacks and the Springboks one up against the Irish. But we'll jump into it. Front row that you believe Rassie will be selecting for this contest. Good luck, mate. Let's hear who you've got.
I got... this is tough, mate. I'm going Steenekamp, Grobler, Porthen. That's what I'm going.
So giving Zachary Porthen a bit of an opportunity alongside those 2 Bulls players that we've seen predominantly throughout November.
Yeah, and look, these are the players that have not been officially sent home. So you're picking from what's left. I mean, I got a list. I try to figure it out, go to the South African newspapers, and I got a list of 25 players that are available. You got to put 23 on the match sheet. So, I'll start with those 3. Yeah.
Well, I actually have 3 differences. So the fact that we've only got about 25 players to pick from and we've already got 3 changes tells you that this one may be not quite as straightforward as it seems with the lack of players available. But I've gone Untuthuku Machunu as the starting number 1, number 2, Bongi Umbanambi, and number 3, Azanati Klabakanye. So I've actually gone with 3 changes.
You've just mentioned my bench. That's exactly my bench.
Yep. To be fair, if you're basing it off minutes, it would make more sense for them to go with those guys off of the bench. But I have a feeling that Rassie is really enjoying his combo at the moment of Grobler, Steenekamp, and also Wilco Low as those replacements to be able to add that impact. And I also, when you look through at the Springbok side, the bench and the starting lineup when it comes to the props, it is pretty much both the starters and the reserves have that same role. You're going to play about 40 minutes, so yeah, there's not much of a difference there. And in this case, I mean, we saw Bongi do very well. The Barbarians, we saw Klabakanye also do nicely in that game, both men actually scoring a try in that contest up against the New Zealand 15. And then Untuthuku Machunu, he was brought in as well as a little bit of extra loosier cover. In my original selections, I actually forgot about him, so I was trying to work out which one of the tight heads I could possibly transition to loose head for this game. But Machunu saved me. So I've gone with him as that number 1. Moving on to the lock-in duo. This is where it gets a little bit confusing, but I've gone Jean Klein as that number 4. For some reason, even though all of the other players like an Argus Neyman, a Thomas de Toy, and those type of guys have been released from the Springbok squad to play for their respective clubs, Jean Klein's still available for this matchup. So it's a bit of an interesting one there, but I have stuck him at 4. And number 5, Ruan Nokia, a player who's been in sensational form, and I do think they'll go with him in the starting lineup for this contest. But still got Etzebeth, still got Mostert, so a couple handy experienced guys that could find themselves thereabouts in this lineup. But for yourself, you gone the same or you gone a little bit different?
Exactly the same. I think Ruan Nokia has just been phenomenal. Yep. And Jean Klein, he needs the minutes. I don't think you need to start even Etzebeth. I have him coming off the bench. I don't think you need to start him because he doesn't need the minutes. But Jean Klein, Ruan Nokia definitely for me. And I think it's a good lock duo.
Yeah, I don't think it will have any trouble in this match up against the Welsh. Like we've said already, a few changes have to be made for Wales as their premiership players have been taken away, but loose forward trio. They already had that big switch, the Welsh, in the early stages of November. The injury of Jack Morgan, which did seem to leave a substantial gap in that number 7 jersey for the Welsh. Aaron Wainwright taken out late before that match up against the All Blacks. So they're having some troubles in that loose forward trio. But for the Springboks, who have you selected here?
Also, again, okay, I got Sia Khaleesi starting.
Yep.
Ben Jason Dixon. And I think Jasper Wissel will start as well.
Okay. And it's an interesting one with the likes of Avisa. He was, of course, a Japanese-based player who is eligible to play in this contest. We did see him getting off the plane with the Springboks in Cardiff, whereas a lot of those other players who were going back to Japan kind of flew the other way in that flight path. But yeah, I've gone pretty similar. In fact, I've gone identical. Sia Khaleesi, Ben Jason Dixon, Jasper Wissel for this game. I felt bad for Ben Jason Dixon when he got taken off the field early, and I do think that Rassie will probably feel that same way, that he wants to give him some sort of decent opportunity here up against the Welsh. And if it is a little bit of a depleted Wales side, that is the type of match where Ben Jason Dixon could really find a lot of confidence if he does step up and play his best rugby. But it's still having Khaleesi and Wissel, like, once again, as small as the Springbok squad now is, there's still a huge amount of superstars all throughout the lineups.
And I mean, Rassie even mentioned it in his press conference that he felt bad for Ben Jason Dixon. So saying that, I do think he should start. I mean, of course, the Stormers would have loved that he had to come back to the Stormers because they could use him on the weekend as well. But no, I agree. I was tempted there for a second not to put Sia in the starting lineup. I thought maybe I'll put Kwaka in there or maybe Markov and Staden even. But now I do think Sia will start. I think he'll start.
And now we move on to the back line. There are, I would say, more question marks around this back line than the forward pack at the moment, mainly because there are so limited options in this regard. In fact, we may even see Rassie go to some of those reserve members of his squad, those guys on standby. It may be required to be able to put together a 23-man side, unless Rassie just goes with a 7-1 split off of the bench, perhaps tries to balance it out a little bit, but we'll wait and see. Of course, for myself, I have gone number 9, Kobus Reinach, number 10, Sasha Feinberg, Ngume Zulu. This seemed like the type of game that Morne Vandenberg and Andre Pollard would have been a great duo to have, but of course Pollard, he has gone back to South Africa, so unavailable for this matchup. And it does mean that in this regard, once again, not really a hit to the team when you've got Sasha as well as Kobus as that starting duo. They've been together throughout the season. They've performed well throughout it as well. So I think it's a pretty decent duo to have up against the Welsh here.
I've gone with Sasha at the 10, same as you, because we don't have, there's only one fly half out there, unless you count Damien Willemse as well. But no, Sasha at the 10, but I've got Morne Vandenberg at the 9, and I've actually got Kobus as my bench player there. I think Morne could do with the minutes. Look, I think if you're a Lions fan, you would have liked to see Morne come back for the game against the Bulls, but he's still there. So I'm going Morne and Sasha. Not a combination we've seen a lot of. I don't think have we ever seen that combination is the question.
Not starting together, I don't think.
So, I think we can try that one out. Look, It is a young Welsh squad that brought in a lot of younger players now to cover. But I mean, why would he play Quibs? I mean, I'm still questioning what was the goal of this fifth game. I mean, the goal for me was when he mentioned the fifth game and we said we're playing against Wales, I thought it would be to try some other players. Yep. So I do think that's why I've gone with Morne van der Berg. I think give him a good run out. We'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens. But I don't think Quibus starts. I just don't think so. Saying that, now Quibus is going to start.
Rassie does have that tendency, doesn't he? Whatever you say, he likes to throw that little curveball in afterwards as well. But we move on to the centre pairing. For yourself, who have you got in this duo?
It's just the question is who's available. Look, I've actually gone Esterhuizen and De Linde for me.
Okay. So I have to ask, who's the 13 in that combination?
Look, I would play Damien De Linde on his normal 12. I wouldn't switch him around because Esterhuizen is already a guy that just plays everywhere in any case. So I would play him on the 13. I've got those two there because I was struggling to find 5 guys for the back line. Honestly, I was struggling to find 5 guys for the back line. I've got a surprise for the bench as well, so we'll see. Now, I've got those two as my centres. Esterhuizen, versatile player, can play basically anywhere. I mean, he can play from... I have him playing from the 6 anyway to the 14, so he's quite flexible. And Damien De Linde, surprised that he didn't go back to Japan, but the Japanese league only starts, I think, on the week of the 18th or something like that. So there's still a few weeks before they start. Because if you look, Jesse Creel, Cheslin Colby, they went back. So it was quite a surprise that Damien De Linde could stay. So I've got him starting the 12 and Esterhuizen on the 13.
It does seem like Rassie has quite a good relationship with the Japanese top league, doesn't he? Because it was mentioned about for that first match up against the Japanese outside of the international window as well, they were willing to let those Springboks be released to be able to play up against the Japan side. So I feel like there's a few guys that maybe Rassie was like, look, we don't have enough outside of that, so can we have them for just 1 or 2 more games? And obviously they've said, yes, go for it, and yes, see what you can do with those players. I have also gone Damien De Linde as my number 12, but I've gone with Kane and Moody as the 13 here. It is a combination that we've seen Rassie try, and it is a combination that we know will work quite well in this type of matchup. They could easily go with someone else in that 13 jersey. Maybe if Kane and Moody is expected to play out on the wing in this match. I know that Edwald van der Merwe was another question mark, although it does seem unlikely that he's going to be able to make it back in time for this game, seeing as he's just flown back to South Africa. So the man's going to have jet lag on top of jet lag if he does end up making it onto the field up against the Welsh. But yeah, Moody and De Linde, once again, limited members of the squad, but still an outstanding midfield duo for Rassie. In this case, moving on to the back three, I have gone Ethan Hooker out on that left wing side. He is another guy that could be looked at as a possibility in that midfield combo. This is where they kind of needed someone like a Makazole Mapimpi to not have a suspension, because then that way probably could have just chucked him straight on the left wing side, although he must be close to the end of that suspension. I want to say he's about 4 or so games through it at this point in time.
It was a 5-game suspension. It was a 5-game suspension.
Thought so. But then does it count as games to him if he's on the standby list with the Springboks rather than in the main squad? That's probably the tricky part, because we could see him go back in terms of the Sharks URC season. We may not see him for another 4 weeks, 5 weeks or so, depending on the team.
That would be mismanagement. That would be actually mismanagement from the Springboks, because if being on the standby list doesn't count for him missing games, that's mismanagement. Because then I would have just had him on the list of the players. Because
similar to Visa last year, when he was doing a suspension.
Because as a Springbok coach, you would want to say, okay, we'll add him to the list and let him. We might not be using him now because he's suspended, but we're adding him to the list so that his suspension is gone. I mean, that would just make, from a management point of view, that would make all the sense in the world, wouldn't it?
But whether or not they have done that, of course, we will have to wait and see. Maybe he does get named in this lineup, because theoretically there have been quite a few games since that suspension, but no rumours as of yet as to whether or not he will be a guy that could be added in. But I hope that the rumour comes out very soon that this man, who I have put at number 14, has joined up with the Springbok squad, that being Sebastian de Klerk. Now, The Springboks, they are a little bit light in terms of backs available for this game, and Seb de Klerk was on that standby list. Now, the Bulls are playing in South Africa. That is the one really tricky part of this whole scenario. Had he been with the Sharks or the Stormers, those two sides, I believe, have already made their way up towards Europe, so then would have been just a short little flight over to Cardiff to be able to play in this contest, whereas for Sebastian de Klerk, it's a bit more of a long haul, and they should probably get onto that phone call if he is going to be added in, because, you know, the game's only about 4 days away. But overall, I think that someone will appear for this matchup, whether or not it's going to be a Seb de Klerk or a Lelion Zas. He was actually someone who I considered a little bit. We did see him for the Barbarians. He is with the Stormers, so maybe just chuck him in for the one matchup. But yeah, it's a very tricky one. I think that this is almost harder to work out who those gaps are going to be filled by than when we had about a 36-man Springbok squad trying to work out who was going to be going in. Number 15, I've gone with Damian Valimza. It means that you got your fly half cover in the starting lineup, if that is the combination that they're willing to go with. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And there should be enough versatility with the rest of the players here to be able to find someone to drop into 15 if needed. So that's my back three I'm predicting. But of course, I need many things to go right for it to become a reality here.
I need everything to go right. Look, the Storm. Look, we know the Stormers are playing against Munster, and we know that the Sharks are playing against Connacht. So they're both on the island already, the team. So I can see that. I've also got Sebastian de Klerk, but I've got him actually on the bench. I'm going with my 11 as Ethan Hooker. I'm putting Moody on the 14, and I'm playing Willems on the 15. And then I've got Sebastian de Klerk on the bench because I think he's also quite versatile in a lot of those positions. And if you need to make a change with Sasha, you can always still put Willems on the 10. You can move him in from the 15 to the 10. And I think Sebastian de Klerk has played 1 or 2 games also as a fullback. So I think he could be a little bit of a cover there. I wouldn't even be surprised if you see maybe an Ethan Hooker go as cover at the 15. You know, they got to do something because, I mean, there's not a lot of players to choose from.
Yeah. And Kurtley Arendse, for me, is the one at the moment who I have no idea about. There are rumours that he has gone back to South Africa. There are also rumours about that concussion, that it's still, you know, affecting him a little bit more here. So if he is available, for me, he is that fill-in for 14, and then in which case you wouldn't need to bring in Sebastian de Klerk. But if he is unavailable, of course, then they will need some sort of cover.
Well, I was hearing a lot of rumours that if Arneson is available, he will start at 15.
That could work.
That has been mentioned, and Willems would go to the bench as cover. So, but hey, listen, it doesn't. We're talking about Rassie here, so is anything a surprise anymore? But it is not easy. I thought it would be easier to name this squad than it is, because you know the less players you have to pick from, you think it should be easier, but it's not that easy. But no, Hooker, Moody, Willems, I think will start. And I think Sebastian de Klerk will be on the bench. Look, you could have had Luka Hanya but I think he's in Japan already with his new team. Mapimpi, I actually think his suspension is done because if you sit out the 4 Springbok games, and I think he did 1 URC game beforehand. So I'm not quite sure if he got suspended in the last game or in the second last game. So he could be available. And then there are rumors that Edwin van der Merwe could be flying back, but if he's flying back, he better be on the plane already. Otherwise, time becomes of the essence. And then, of course, you still have a few Springbok players out there that are with the Sharks, with the Stormers, that you could be using. You know, you might even see one of the very young under 20 players that have been around the squad for a while. Maybe get in there. You know, give them a go because the Welsh are also doing the same. They're getting a lot of young players, so you might want to put one of those in, but. You know, you want to keep momentum going. I don't think we have to. I don't think we lose this game. If there's so many changes and players are playing out of position, things can happen. You know.
Well, I've got a short list of those under 20 Springbok players that definitely would be able to join up quite nicely. Someone like a Chiswell Euster.
Yes,
very handy out on the wing. Vusi Moyo, bit of fly half cover there with the youngsters. So. You know, even adding those two, Klakane, if you needed some sort of extra forward cover, although I think they're pretty fine in that department at the moment. But we will move on to the bench now for this matchup. For yourself, You mentioned how my starting front row is your reserves front row. So
Exactly.
Why have you gone with Machunu, Umanambi, and Klapakanye here?
Because they're the only ones that are still there.
No. Although, elephant in the room is no Wilco Low for yourself.
No, look, it was either, if I put Walker Low in there, I don't think, I just think you got to give Portland another chance. Walker Low's played a lot of rugby. Give him a break. I knew you couldn't, I was clear that Azanati couldn't go on to the 16. So, and I think Bongi is clear. You got to have a second hooker in there. So I went Manchuna, Bongi, Azanati. Walker Low, can he play any other positions? I don't know, be honest with you. So I haven't got him in the team. I think he could, he's done a lot of work through these internationals. I think he could do with the rest, yeah.
Okay, so I've got him as my number 18. So I'm working him just that little bit harder for the last game of the year. Gerhard Stennekamp as the 17 and Johan Rubela Sottigan as the 16. So keeping those three bulls together, I think that if Wales managed to get through 40 minutes of this game without that same treatment that we saw up against the Irish, they would have been doing extremely well. And then you go into this reserve front row and it's just going to cause all sorts of problems for the young Welshmen. So, yeah, overall, I think no matter what they do here, it is going to be a very much so impact front row for the Boks. And even having someone like Klapakanye, like you mentioned, having him coming off the bench alongside Machunu, like that's not going to make scrums any easier for Wales in this game either. I've gone with the 6-2 split in this matchup. So I've actually got Eben Etzebeth as my number 19, and the experienced veteran off of the bench. Number 20, Franco Mostert.
Yeah, same as me.
The same as you. Okay, I was waiting for that. And then number 21, Kwaka Smith.
Same as me.
There we go. So the benches at the moment, other than, of course, our front rows where we've really gone completely different.
Yeah.
They're looking pretty similar. I think that having Kwaka as an impact player off the bench, I'll be honest, if Kwaka Smith and Jasper Wiese were going back to Japan like I thought they were going to, I would have actually gone Evan Roos, Vincent Tuchuka as my two players to bring in for these games, although I just don't know whether or not their URC sides would actually want to lose those guys. They've both been outstanding throughout this URC season, both in great form. So, they would be the first ones on that standby list that I would have looked towards. But in this case, you still got Kwaka Smith, still got Franco Mostert, so still got a very strong replacement bench.
Yeah, look, if Jasper Wiese and Kwaka Smith would have gone back, I would have actually had Andre Esterhuizen in there somewhere, and I would have just started de Klerk. I would have just started him. But no, I agree. Look, we're not that far off each other today. Just the question is, are you starting or you're on the bench? You had Kobus starting, and I have Kobus as the 22 on the bench.
Well, for myself, I've got Morne Vandenberg as that bench impact player, and then Andre Esterhuizen at 23. So in a way, I kind of do have a 7-1 split, depending on where they want to put Andre Esterhuizen. But I do think having that versatility of Esterhuizen off the bench is quite crucial in this type of matchup. Once again, it's a complete headache for the selectors in this matchup because, you're just so limited with what you're able to do. But there's one thing that we have learnt is the adaptation of the Springboks this year has been pretty much incredible in terms of the way that they have been able to create lineups out of injuries that they've had, little gaps that have had to be filled, and then they've filled them almost sometimes even stronger than what was already in the side. So, you've got Sebastian Klerk as that 23 as well. Do you feel like he could be one of those kind of future Springbok greats if given many opportunities, or do you think that line's just too long that he's got to go through at the moment?
It's a long line, but I think he's a fantastic player. I've got him as 23. If Arnese is still in the team, which is conflicting reports at the moment. If Arnese was in, I would have actually had Willems on the bench and Arnese in the starting lineup, just to cover for Sasha. You could have put Willems in starting the 10 and put Sasha on the bench. There's a lot of options there because he has played that position. I do like Sebastian de Klerk. I think he doesn't get the recognition sometimes he deserves. He's played good seasons for the Bulls. I think he's a good player, and I'd like to see him get some minutes just to show what he can. Yes, it's not against the strongest team in the world, but sometimes it's better for these up-and-coming players that haven't had a lot of minutes for the Springboks to ease them in against a team that's maybe not ranked in the top 10, put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm being nice to the Welsh today.
Well, they did all right up against the All Blacks, didn't they? And then having that win
They
the week
scored
prior.
well.
They did. 4 tries. It's more
Yeah.
than most teams have scored up against the All Blacks, other than, of course, the Springboks. They were able to score quite a few in Wellington. But, yeah, it's going to be an intriguing game. These two sides, they could shape up very differently from what we've seen for the rest of the year. But I think it's still going to be a very entertaining one. It's going to be some curveballs. And like I mentioned, we are filming this early enough in the week that we have not learnt the information yet. We wanted to leave it as late as possible, but we are already midweek and there's just nothing that has been released outside of that press conference and the stories of certain players. I think a few of those guys that have been rumoured as not available may actually end up still playing in this contest as well. So it's very hard to judge, but hopefully we're not going to be a mile off in terms of these 23s. But nonetheless, we do thank you all very much for tuning in. It is the last Springboks lineup prediction of the year. Certainly a tough one, but they should get easier as we move through 2026. But anyone who is new, of course, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Let us know who you think Rassie will be selecting. Be sure to check out Vic from Vik&Wern Sports Chat as well. As much stick as he has been getting throughout some of the most recent videos, which tell you what, there has been a huge amount of it. It has been greatly appreciated you coming on the channel, mate.
No problem, man. No problem. Everybody is allowed to have their opinion. That includes me. Yeah, look, it's not always that easy. I mean, this show, I think some people kind of forget the show is it's not our predictions. It's what we think Rassie's going to do. I'm going to try to do my prediction show later this week. I'm trying to keep it like as long as possible, try to get as much information as possible. I'm hoping that we get more information tomorrow to make that show. But yeah, it's thanks for having me on. It's been great. I mean, looking forward to that first one of next year, Springboks against England. That's going to start the rugby international year with a bang.
England going into that match with that winning streak, if they can hold on throughout the whole Six Nations and Grand Slam it. And then, of course, South Africa, the #1 side in the world in the rankings, as well as in that World Cup draw. We're going to get to see who's playing everyone in those groups.
Who have you got winning the Six Nations?
See, I think England are going to be a hard side to beat, but then France always seem to get up for the Six Nations, don't they? For me, the winning matchup is England versus France. Whoever wins that game, Ireland have a pretty tough draw this year, so I don't want to rule them completely out, but they will have to do a lot of work away from home to get themselves the victory. But yeah, I'm going whoever wins England-France, for me, is going to be the champions.
It is in England, the game, right?
I believe so. So that's a tough one for the French too. So have to wait and see. It's only about 70 days away as well. It's just flying by. It's almost the World Cup.
Will Dupont be back for the French?
I would say so. I think that he's just about back now. I think he's probably within that next month or two. We'll see him start and run around, and it'll be raring to go for those matches.
I'm gonna go with the English because people always say I bash the English. Now I think the English will do it this year. I actually can't see anybody doing the Grand Slam this year. I actually think Ireland, France, and England could all be with one loss on their record going into the. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting, though.
Well, the crazy thing is, if England were to do the Grand Slam, that would mean theoretically that they're on a 16-match winning streak. Getting into their game up against South Africa, which then puts them into a position of getting very close to that all-time English international winning streak record. So I feel like that's one that the Boks would definitely love to end and put a stop to. It takes a long time to win 16 games in a row, that is for sure.
And they'll be very close. If they do the Grand Slam, they'll be very close to the world #1 rankings as well.
That's true. That's going to be the next year's Ireland versus South Africa from this year. I feel like it's got to happen.
And we all South Africans, we're really looking forward to inviting Mr. Pollock to South Africa.
Yeah, it's going to be an intriguing one. Like 2026 seems to be the year that international rugby is just going absolutely crazy before that Rugby World Cup, and hopefully just that hype keeps on building. We'll know who's going to be in whose draws, so we'll get to see some prelims of matches that will be happening for that Rugby World Cup as well. But nonetheless, we do thank you all very much for tuning in. We could talk for another couple of hours about this World Cup and whatnot, but we will try not to. Thank you all very much for watching, and we will see you all for the next one.